Hello. It will be tea, but I literally just brewed this cup. So I'm not gonna drink it, because that's gonna hurt like hell. Sort of like where all this is going. Okay, so we've got 3 chapters today, and let's see if I can remember them all in the order that they appear. Which would be The Last Hiding Place, The Lost Mirror, no, The Missing Mirror, and The Lost Item. And that's, can you tell what we're working with? This mystery, lost, hidden subtext of just, and it's sort of interesting because what we're seeing in these chapters that when you bring them all together really do have this sort of lust and seeking sort of side effect to them. We're also getting just this theme of everything falling into place, and by falling into place I mean everything falling down. Everything really is just starting to collapse on both sides of everything. And why I really like starting this with The Last Hiding Place is because that is actually one of the first images we see, is this collapse, this falling, that these characters are desperately trying to make a controlled fall, which would be their exit off the back of the dragon. Because you are sort of seeing this moment at the very start where they were like, we have no control. Like, that's the very start of this set of chapters, was there is no way to steer, there is no way to hold on if this dragon banks or loops or anything. Like, Ron's just swearing, Hermione's crying, and Harry's just like, this was not where I was expecting to be. And it seems he's recognizing it's this impossible escape, because it is. This is sort of an impossible situation that he suddenly found himself in. He's just like, oh my god. So this collapsed exit off the dragon in some semblance of a controlled fashion gives us a clue of how these next sort of chapters are going to go. Especially then when we get the other side within that Last Hiding Place chapter, which is Voldemort's, like, just having this information collapsing on top of him, and his plan to actually survive all this is falling apart, and he's just realizing it now. Like, he hadn't allowed for this possibility, and now everything's just collapsing on top of him, because he's made the realization that someone somewhere has made this connection to his Horcruxes. Because the diary, in the situation that it was in, and he knows that story, could be forgiven, because, well, it was a destructive thing, and Harry didn't necessarily need to know what it was before he destroyed it, which is true. Harry didn't know what it was. Dumbledore had an inkling of what it was. And that's sort of the mistake that Voldemort makes, is he likes to think that he's way up here, and everybody else, intelligent-wise and power-wise, is like way down here. Turns out he's got some equals in that, who are very systematically working through all this. So as he's having this realization that two of his Horcruxes now are gone, his plan's just falling down on top of him, and he's scrambling now to fix it. And it's coming off, of course, in really bad ways, because it's Voldemort, and his, emotional control is nil. So his immediate response is to kill everybody. And not just because they lost the Horcrux. The other thing that Rowling notes is because they heard about it. He can't even risk his own followers discovering what these things actually are. That's too big of a risk for him. So he has to destroy these possibilities of any of this information getting out, even when he is physically destroying his own followers. Like, and Harry's witnessing this, like, shit. So for them to, the Golden Trio is still moving, because that's the interesting thing. For them, everything has already collapsed. Like, had some of their worst points at this point in time. So they've figured out how to keep moving once everything's collapsed. They've had to. They've had no other choice, so they're still going for it. Like, they sort of watch the dragon go and say, okay, if the dragon can fall and get back up again, we can too, and we need to go. And they just keep doing that, like, even once they set off the caterwauling charm, like, they don't panic. They're sort of backing up, like they're still under the cloak, nobody's made a break for it, they're trying to figure things out, and again, they've got luck on their sides, they've also got allies on their sides, because they've run into Aberforth. And again, we have pieces falling into place with Harry, because he doesn't even have to ask. Like, he looks at Aberforth and says, "You're the eye I've seen. And I know you. You're Aberforth Dumbledore. You're Albus's younger brother." And Hermione looks at the painting and goes, "And that's your sister." It's falling into place, and we get this entire sort of lesson where, again, everything is just crashing down on these people, because Harry has to stand up to Aberforth after this really heartbreaking story of what actually happened to Ariana. I have heard theories, and I agree with one particular theory, of that actually explains Ariana. I would explain it here, but it does include spoilers for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which has not been out nearly as long as the Harry Potter books have been. So, if you are interested in understanding Ariana, particularly in reference to Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, movie, not the textbook, I'm going to link to a video down below that I find really explained it well, which is the Super Carlin brothers, who, if you love all things nerdy, Disney, Star Wars, Harry Potter, all things like that, I would definitely recommend their videos, but having explained Ariana, that's the one I'm going to link to. Keep in mind, of course, that some of their theories have been proven or disproven. Rowling herself has actually come in and judged a couple of them, which I think is pretty cool. But I think this one is exactly what Rowling was going for, so I'm just going to link that down below. Because it's also hard, because you are looking at this sort of realization again, that crashing down of the story that you've built up around this, which is this story of doubt, and oh, it was their squib daughter who they locked in the basement. That story is crashing down, because Aberforth is saying, like, no, she was attacked when she was a child and became dangerous because of it at times, but she was still just a child, and they wanted to keep her as a child rather than have everyone judge her as a danger. And the entire family did it, because their father Percival, like, went to Azkaban and then never explained why he had attacked the Muggles. Like, he just shut up about it, and he let everyone talk about how he's a Muggle hater, because he was protecting his daughter. Just barely. Huh. So that story that they've created comes crashing down. But it does on Aberforth too, because Harry, again, comes up right against him, and he says that, like, no, Dumbledore was finally free of it. And Harry goes, he was never free. Like, he stomps on that. He says, there were points in time that I saw him and he was not free. Specifically, of course, in regards to this potion. And Dumbledore begging Grindelwald to hurt him, to leave his family alone. But there are other moments, of course, that we can point to. Moments with the Mirror of Erised. I think also moments with Harry at the end of the first book. Because a lot of people say that would have been the time for Dumbledore to tell Harry about the prophecy. But Dumbledore already watched one child unable to have a childhood because the past had just sort of broken them down. So I could see why he didn't. Like, I can see why he decided he wanted Harry to have a childhood. I think he was maybe a little naive in that choice, but again, it was Dumbledore trying to fix things after Ariana. And all that sort of comes crashing down on top of them. That's what they're dealing with, is just everything falling down. And it just keeps going, because once they actually get into Hogwarts, it's this realization then for Harry, sort of in this last moment, that he can no longer rebuff everybody. Like, for him, he's managed to keep the adults at bay by saying, like, you trust Dumbledore. Dumbledore trusted me with this. You need to let me do this. He can't do that with his own peers. They grew up with him. They're just sort of like, I'm pretty sure we're more powerful than you in some ways, and we've been dealing with just as much shit here at Hogwarts as you've been dealing with out there, and you can't just push us away. And that's sort of the last falling down bit for Harry, is the realization that maybe he's become too much of the worst of Dumbledore, which is this tendency to be secretive and to assume that nobody else can help you. That it always has to be just you, and you have to rely only on yourself, or yourself and your very narrow selection of people, which is, his peers are not letting him get away with it. They're just sort of like, get out of here with that bullshit. Like, get out. We're here too. We're fighting too. You can't just walk away from us on this after everything. Because what he has to remember is Harry and the Golden Trio also brought them into it. They were the ones that originally formed Dumbledore's army. So everything after that point, he needs to take responsibility for. And I think that's sort of the last part that's falling into place with Harry. That's gotta be utterly terrifying. Like, just this recognition that these kids are going to go to war. And most of them, at least some of them, if not most of them, if not all of them, heaven forbid, are not going to make it. Like, it's this realization that he's been trying to avoid asking them to do this, because he never once wants someone to die for him. But it's this recognition now that he needs to ask them to do this. And they are looking at him saying, ask us to do this and we will do this. We'll probably do this even without you asking, but we want your confidence to say that I believe that you guys can make a difference, and I believe that you guys can survive past this. Even if all of them recognize that some of them likely aren't going to. It's a vote of confidence for them, for Harry to say, I trust you with this. In the face of everything, I trust you with this, which is what Harry's been dealing with this entire time. Why didn't Dumbledore trust me enough with this? And Harry has to let that go. He can't be Dumbledore just as much as he can't be Tom Riddle. He needs to be Harry. And Harry is a mix of both, and Harry needs to trust his friends and his peers and say, okay, yes, this is how it's going to go down. And we are going to fight. I mean, like, we are about to go into the serious all-out wars chapters of these books. And I think one of the hardest battles for Harry was fought in this moment, in the Lost Diadem chapter, which is for him to look at his friends and look at his family and look at his schoolmates and say, I trust you to fight alongside me, knowing that we might not get out of this. That's heartbreaking, but that is also one of the greatest moments of trust for Harry, who grew up trusting nobody but himself. In this moment, Harry says, yes, I trust you all, and I ask you to fight alongside me. Like I said, it's about to be all-out war. I guess I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.